What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. This pick right here is kind of hits differently now because of obvious recent events regarding Klay Thompson and, quite honestly, the future of his career. Um, this pick is kind of unusual for me, and the reason why I'm kind of hesitating is it's kind of ironic, man, considering what's going on now. This pick is kind of unusual for me because if you've been following my channel for a while, you'll know that I'm a big stickler for longevity. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not one of those guys that project like, man, this guy has done this already in 4 years, so he already, has done this, so he has to be on the way to that. I don't do that. I go by what you've already accomplished and how does this fit toward and compared to what other guys have done, not in a comparable amount of years, but what those guys have done in their entire careers. And how do I rank this guy compared to what this guy done? Maybe this guy isn't as great a player peak for peak, but this guy played a high level for 17, 18 years, or for most of those years. This guy's only played for 5 years. So how do I compare that? How do I, you know, justify putting this guy that, I do a lot of, I look at things from different angles. Klay is, like I said, a little unusual for me because he's only played in 600 something games and he's only scored 11,000 points. And generally speaking, I usually don't like putting people on these lists until they've reached certain milestones, 17,000 or something, if they're scores, approaching 20,000. But Klay has really grown on me over the past couple of years. It's funny because I didn't like Klay at one time. I didn't like the Warriors. I didn't like any of those guys. Um, but in light of the recent injury to Klay, he just was rehabbing from the ACL tear, and I believe it was the left knee. And you got to remember the ACL tear. That's the same injury that Bernard King suffered some 35 years ago, back in the prehistoric days when it comes to knee injuries. And back then, that was pretty much a career-ending type injury. But Bernard King, it took him, I think, 2 years to come back. But he did. It was a grueling process. Matter of fact, I think the doctors told Bernard King not only would he not play basketball again, but to be able to even walk, he would have to have surgery. And that's back when they opened your knee up completely. They had to it was a gruesome, very invasive surgery. Nowadays, they've made a lot of progress and advances in these types of surgery, but still, an ACL tear is still something serious. And then to have a complete rupture, to have a complete rupture of the Achilles, if anything, that's an even worse injury. And, you hope that Klay's able to come back at a high level. I do believe that eventually Klay will be back. Um, I think he'll still be an effective offensive player, but the defensive end, I think that he's not going to be the same guy on that end. You know? But when you look at the Warriors' run, the 5 consecutive NBA Finals, and you look at the wear and tear that comes with a run like that, it sort of reminds me in the back of my head of the Pistons. Um, the Pistons went to, I believe, five. What was it? Was it 4 or 5? I think they went to 5 Eastern Conference Finals in a row: 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, and 3 NBA Finals in a row: 88, 89, 90. And that was a hell of a run. And you saw with Isaiah Thomas, can wear on you. Um, but man, look, Klay is probably the most undervalued player on the Warriors. Steph gets all the attention for being, such a prolific scorer and shooter, but Klay's not shabby. Um, Klay's not shabby at all. I mean, if Steph is the best shooter in the NBA, Klay's number two. You know what I'm saying? And in my opinion, from watching both of them play, Curry shoots at a slightly higher percentage, more or less. Klay's a little bit more streaky, but some of that could be because of the fact that on the defensive end, Klay is more valuable. Klay does more. Draymond Green gets a lot of, or used to get a lot of adulation for his defense. Um, won a Defensive Player of the Year award some years back. But if you watch the Warriors play, Klay is the one that often draws the most um, dangerous, uh, being now that's more of a perimeter-oriented NBA, and the more potent scorers are usually guards or shooting guards. Klay Thompson usually draws that assignment. So it's kind of funny. On the defensive end, Klay, who is a really good defensive player, not a lockdown guy, but he's a really good defensive player. At least he was. And then on the offensive end, Klay still would be often a clutch performer. That's the thing I noticed about Klay. Whenever there was a pivotal game, a playoff game in particular, Klay, I noticed, has a knack for knocking down key shots. I remember doing some statistics years ago. Now, the numbers probably aren't accurate anymore, but I think I did like in 2018, and I was tracking like the shooting performances of Steph and Klay and elimination games or game sevens. You know what I'm saying? And I remember some numbers. I remember Steph shooting something like 41% and 39% from three and averaging like 23 points or something like that, which are good numbers, but below what you normally see from him. And I remember Klay being at 45% shooting and 41% from three and averaging like 22 points a game, which is actually a little bit better than what his normal numbers are. You know, so that this kind of shows you when the chips are, what I'm saying, when the chips are down and the Warriors need buckets, it was often Klay. I remember the 11 3-pointers game in Game 6 of what was that series between the Warriors and the Thunder when the Warriors came after that 3-1 deficit, only to give up a 3-1 deficit next round. But still, Klay is a great clutch performer, and you know, just had a lot of respect for him, man. But when you look at Klay Thompson and what he's accomplished for his career, he's averaged 19.5 points per game, which may not jump out at you, but when you consider the fact that he's never been the first option offensively, and during the Kevin Durant years, he was third option, and had to adjust to that. The fact that he's still been able to average that for his career is pretty good. And the thing I love about Klay is, and why I know he'll still be good, is he's not a high usage guy. You know what I'm saying? He can kind of, you know, create his own shot, but his bread and butter has been running off screens or whatever, and being a catch and shoot guy. And he doesn't need a lot of room to get his shot off. He has such uh, 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 you know, his release is quick. Everybody talks about Steph Curry, but Klay Thompson's release is quick, and it's such a perfect looking jump shot. You know what I'm saying? It's right out of central casting as to what a shooter should look like and how a shooter should shoot. You know, for his look at his career, his numbers, he's about a 46% shooter from the floor, uh, 41 to 42% from three, which is excellent considering that he's also a volume 3-point shooter, and he's about 85% from the foul line, which is better than average. You know, not quite to the 90%, uh, percentile that a Steph Curry or a Mark Price or a Steve Nash or a Rick Barry is, or close to that, like a Ray Allen or Larry Bird or Stojakovic or Ray Allen, but it's still very good. It's still a better percentage than great shooters or great scorers, I should say, like Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, um, Alex English, Adrian Danton, who are all really good foul shooters too. But look at Klay Thompson's accomplishments. He's a three-time NBA champion, five-time NBA All-Star, two-time All-NBA third team, NBA All-Defensive second team. He won the three-point contest uh, in 2016. He was on the All-Rookie first team in 2012. And look at his career averages. He averages about 19.5 points per game. And I think he averages around 2.5 assists per game. So he's not really known for his passing ability, but he's not a guy that generally has the ball in his hands a lot. And if there's any weaknesses, he's not a really good rebounder. He's usually somewhere in that 3.5 range. He's not a really strong rebounder, especially considering he's 6'6". Um, but what he provides out there on the court, um, more than makes up what might be other weaknesses in his game. In many ways, when you look at his game, you look at his numbers, it kind of reminds you of Reggie a little bit. And when I watch Klay, he kind of reminds me of Reggie in some ways, except for Klay's a better defensive player than Reggie. Reggie gave effort, but Reggie wasn't as good defensively. And to me, you have to credit Mark Jackson for that. Essentially, Mark Jackson uh, groomed Klay Thompson to replace Monta Ellis. Okay, um, I think Klay was. Let me check this up right quick. Klay was selected with the 11th pick of the draft, 2011 draft, and essentially he was picked because he was a shooter. Um, you know what I'm saying? And with Curry also being a jump shooter, he'd be more of a fit, a complementary fit for Steph Curry, who was at that time starting to emerge as a real force in the NBA. Klay Thompson went to high school at Santa Margarita, and he went to college at Washington State. And it was Mark Jackson who helped Klay Thompson work on his defensive ability, realizing that he was a guy that didn't need the ball. Um, and basically, by him being a guy that doesn't need the ball, he could be a defensive force on one end, but on the other end, because he's not exerting himself as much, still be an effective offensive player. So Mark Jackson, to me, really doesn't get the credit he deserved for being the architect of that team. Yeah, there might have been some tweaks made by Steve Kerr as far as the roster and maybe exactly how certain guys uh, played within the offense or whatever. But the pieces, Mark Jackson put that team together, right? Um, what else do I want to say here? Klay Thompson. The reason why I decided to put him over Sam Jones, even though Sam Jones has 10 NBA championships, you gotta penalize him for that. Um, the same way that I'm growing to start to penalize Bill Russell for that. There was no free agency. It was a lot easier in that era for teams to have, as long as you were drafting great players and keeping these guys, you had these super dynasties. You're not going to see an NBA team win 11 championships in 13 years, or you're not going to see the Yankees win, what is it, like 10 World Series in a 15-year span. You're not going to see these types of super mega dynasties anymore because of free agency. All right. So, and plus, that was an era where, in basketball at least, shit, you only had 8 to 14 teams. Now, of course, it's 30 teams. So it's greater competition. The playoffs go longer. There's more rounds. There's more games these guys play. So you kind of have to penalize these guys a little bit for the fact that their eras were a little bit easier. Matter of fact, some of those years when Boston won titles, they had buys in the first round. Some of those years they actually had buys. So at the end of the day, you kind of do have to, they had it easier in a lot of ways. Now, on the flip side, you can say, well, if it's fewer teams, that means that their competition on a nightly basis was better. You can say that, you know. They didn't necessarily play horrible cellar dweller teams um, like that, but still, what I'm saying? If you're getting buys in the first round and, and you're not really, you're only playing 2 rounds of the playoffs, that's not the same as today, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, at number 8, I have Klay Thompson. Hopefully, Klay can come back from this type of injury. Um, you know, if anybody can come back, it'll be Klay. You know what I'm saying? Um, he's not a big guy like, say, DeMarcus Cousins. Big men are the ones that really struggle from these types of injuries. Klay's a smaller guy, and you know his game isn't predicated on athleticism. So I think Klay will be eventually he'll come back. He may not have the longevity, unfortunately, that I thought he would have, say, just a year and a half ago. But but we'll see, man. Tell me what you guys think.